Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are joining us. I'm very delighted to welcome you all to the Institute for Security Studies on the occasion of our today's seminar titled Boeremag on Trial, How an Investigation Ended Right-Wing Terrorism in South Africa. My name is Martin Ewi. I'm the Technical Coordinator of the ENACT project here at the Institute for Security Studies. This seminar affords us an opportunity to review Karin Mitchell's newest book, The High Treason Club, The Boeremag on Trial, which recounts the story of one of South Africa's most dangerous right-wing movements. The heroism of the investigation that brought them down, the jurisprudence that shaped subsequent prosecutions of terrorist cases, including the Henry Oka and Tutsi cases in South Africa. The Institute for Security Studies is grateful for the support from members of the ISS Partnership Forum, the Hans Seider Foundation, the European Union, the Open Society Foundations, and the government of Denmark, Ireland, the Netherlands, Norway, Sweden, and others, which makes events like this seminar possible. Terrorism anywhere, in any form, is abhorrent. The Afrikaner white supremacist group, known as Boeremag, loosely translated as Boer's power or Boer's force, or literally translated as the army of Afrikaner farmers, gained currency at the end of apartheid and the installation of the first democratically elected government in South Africa. At the quietest time of the day, just past midnight on that infamous Wednesday, the 30th of October, 2002, is the day that the Boeremag chose to reign in hell in Soweto, with bombs exploding from every corner of the township. It was South Africa's 9/11 that epitomized the seriousness of the threat posed by white supremacist groups or the remnant of apartheid loyalists. When investigators uncovered the Boeremag's plot to assassinate South Africa's first democratically elected president, Nelson Mandela, and to annihilate the Black race, many feared that it could trigger an all-out racial war in South Africa. After winning the war against Pagat, people against gangsterism and drugs, Boeremag presented the biggest test to the new democratic institutions. The state responded by unleashing the rule of law, criminal justice mechanisms. The 26 people who were arrested were thoroughly investigated, tried, and those found guilty were convicted and given sentences between 5 and 35 years each. The prosecution began in earnest in December 2002 and lasted 9 years, 1,280 court days, involved over 200 witnesses, and produced a transcript of 60,000 pages. 23 accused were charged with high treason, and some of them with murder, sabotage, and terrorism in March 2003. Verdicts were handed down only in 2012. All this is captured in Karin's 352-page new book. This seminar is not just a book review. It is a journey into the heart of South Africa's struggle with terrorism and the victory of criminal justice. Our panelists are not bystanders. They are the maker of Karin's story, the deep and loud voices of the book. You will therefore be hearing from the horse's own mouth the rise, the adjudication, and the fall of Boeremag. We are extremely gratified to have here with us on the podium Karin Mitchell, a fearless journalist with a knack for covering some of the most dangerous cases, such as Marikana massacre, Oscar Pistorius' murder. She is the author of the High Treason Club, the Boeremag on trial. We also have with us Colonel retired Tolle Vredenberg, the lead investigator of the Boeremag case. We are also joined by the advocate Dries van Rensburg, who was the prosecutor in the Boeremag trial. We will proceed with the seminar as follows. I will ask each panelist a set of 3 questions to be answered in 12 minutes. I will start with Karin, to be followed by Tolle and Dries in that order. Once all the panelists have provided their reflections, I will open the floor for general discussion. Given the shortage of time, participants are strongly advised to pose their questions using the chat function, particularly for those joining us online. I will also accept questions or comments directly from the participant in the room and online. Participants online who wish to speak should use the hand function to request to speak. All questions or comments should be kept under a minute. At the end of the discussion, we will have a finger launch, which will be preceded by a signing ceremony by the author, who will autograph books purchased by participants. Those of you who wish to purchase copies of the book, please do let us know in time so that the author can autograph your copy. Before we kick off, I wish to remind everyone to put your phones on silence and to mute your microphone for those online at all times when you are not speaking. Let me then kick off with you, Karin. I am sure everyone here wants to know about the High Treason Club, which is your book. This one? You started working on this book in 2016 and detail how you got involved in this monumental Boeremag case in the book. Could you share with us a bit about how this all started? Your interest in such a very complex issue. Thank you.
Yeah, just speak.
Please.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. It's a bit strange speaking into a microphone I can't see. Thank you very much for being here this morning. Really appreciate it. So my part in the Boeremag journey actually started in 2011. I was a fresh intern, 2 months into my internship at a radio station, and I was on the news desk on a Sunday evening and got the advisory in saying the Boeremag trial resumes for its 8th year tomorrow with 23 right-wing accused. And spoke to my editor and he said, that's a good place for you to go and get a grasp on court reporting. So I arrived there the next morning after researching all I could research about the Boeremag until 4 a.m. that morning. I mean, it's tough enough to cover a trial with just one accused, and here there was 23, and I had no concept of what the Boeremag was. So went to court, and as I was sitting in the waiting area, there were a few people there, and they said, "You're new here." And I was a bit taken aback, and I said, "Yes, it's my first day here." And the people started introducing themselves. And as the court proceedings started, some of these people actually stepped into the dock. And for me, my mind was blown. I had just seen people sitting outside who were accused of high treason. So got into the courtroom, and eventually I spent 3 months in that courtroom every single day to get a hang of court reporting. Also, part of the news angle of it was 8 years in, no more media houses were deploying journalists to the case because nothing was happening. So I was working for Jacaranda FM at that stage, and we were carrying the only bulletins. So what happened was that I was spending so much time in court that I was observing, because the court proceedings were rather boring. It was the same thing over and over. So I started to observe all of the people in court, like the exchanges of food parcels before the court proceedings would start, trying to establish what the dynamics were between all of the accused. And I just took this case home with me every single night. And eventually I got to a point where I was actually crying with my mom and my sister for the accused's children. And that really hits home, because between 23 accused men, you can imagine how many children are affected. And it was really just from those 3 months that I was purely sent to cover the news angle that it actually touched my heart, and I wanted to know more about this story. So the year after 2011, I was actually taking photos of the accused in the dock. And accused number one, Mike Totoy, I had an iPhone with me. And he said, "Are you taking photos?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "But where are the buttons?" And it took me a second, and I looked at my phone, and I quickly did the math, and I realized he hadn't seen a cell phone in 10 years. So that was still when everybody was using Nokias. And I was joking yesterday with how Tolly was standing all the way at the other side of the courtroom, and how I was really skittishly just like showing him the phone from afar and showing him how we slide on the screens now. And then the next day, I was a young journalist. I wanted a scoop. I wanted to see whether I could get a story out of this. So I thought, okay, I've got an in now. So the next morning at court, took photos again, greeted Mike. And that continued for about 2 or 3 days until I finally mustered up the courage to go and speak to him. And I said, "Listen, I don't know whether this is possible, but I'm really interested about the story behind bars, because everybody's hearing about what's playing out in the courtroom, but what is happening inside? How is it to be an awaiting trial prisoner for this long?" And the next morning, literally stepped into court, and his lawyer came over to me with the folded paper, and he said, "It's from Mike." So unfolded the paper, and it was a handwritten note from Mike saying, "Karin, you're more than welcome to come and visit me in prison this weekend. This is my prisoner number." And before I knew it, I went to prison that next weekend. And I went to interview him, not knowing what I was stepping into. It was absolutely terrifying, being my first time. And I continued interviewing him in prison from 2012 until 2016. So it was a very, very long time. But it was also crucial in understanding, like asking him about his family and how he felt about his family being on the outside. And also it was interesting. I didn't really talk to him about the case, because the case was captured in the court transcripts and the court records. I wanted to know the human aspect behind everything. I wanted to know how he grew up, what led to the actions that he was accused of. So that is basically in short. Also, just to add, the reason for then writing the book comes back to me being that fresh journalist researching the case until 3 a.m. Because no journalists had been deployed to the trial, nobody could capture like a comprehensive story of what the Boeremag was. So for me as a new journalist, I didn't know what I was reporting on. because there was no record of this story. And that's when I realized there was such a big gap, because everybody reported on the same facts and the same, slogans of the Boeremag accused of wanting to kill Nelson Mandela. But when you start researching the Boeremag, it was so much more. And even when I started writing the book in 2016, I realized that I had no idea what I had actually been reporting on, because there was no record.
No, thank you very much for that. I'm very, very happy to hear that your interest was actually on the human dimension. Because if you look at the Boeremag, the suspect defied the usual profile that we have of terrorists. These were highly educated, well-to-do individuals, and the reason why they got into such an activity is still something that we find difficult to comprehend. Did you, when you were interacting with these individuals in court, did you see the severity of the kind of actions that they did? Did that reflect in the court? How did people see them, and how did they themselves? Did they carry remorse with them? I'm really interested to see what was your take when you look at these individuals from that human perspective.
So for me, remember, so I was born in 1989. So I was born at the tail end of apartheid. I believed in the new South Africa, and to be deployed to a case where you have 23 right-wingers who want to kill Nelson Mandela. I was 22 years old, and it was only in hindsight that I realized that I judged every single one of those men as I stepped into the court. And it was interesting that with time, because I had been there for so long, and it was also journalist smoke. So I was outside having a cigarette, and there's a man, he just comes up to me and he sticks out his hand and he's like, "I'm accused number 7. And I was just, it's that typical thing of smokers attract smokers. I've never been so grateful to be a smoker. But then I started speaking to Wimchiel. And Wimchiel would eventually bring his 90-year-old mother to court from the Northern Cape. And it's those stories that suddenly you cannot forget what these people are accused of. And they can appear normal, and most of them did. I would walk past them in the streets and never think that they were accused of high treason or that they are right-wingers even. But you can't forget what they did, and you cannot forget that a person died from their actions as well. But in terms of conversing with them, very polite, well-educated people, and definitely not carrying hatred in their hearts as you would expect to see.
Thank you very much for that. Indeed, we had attempted to have, and indeed, Mr. Cobus Pretorius was invited to be part of this panel, but unfortunately that could not go through, so we'll be missing him in this panel. He could have been able to provide more details in terms of those interactions with the suspect. But Karin, I want to ask you, given that beautiful background that you've given us, if you were to give this book to someone, to summarize this book within 2 minutes, to someone to really take away the heart of this book, what is it that you would say? Can you give us a brief rundown of this book to the audience? Those who are looking forward to it, they may not have read it. Some might not even have money to buy it for the future. But give us just a quick overview of this book.
I love when people say summarize the Boeremag in 2 minutes, but let's do it. So it was South Africa's longest and most costly trial. This is literally just facts. 23 accused. And what essentially, if you look at the Boeremag from outside now, there were 3 phases of the Boeremag. So you had the first phase, which was under Mike du Toit's leadership, who I interviewed in prison. And that was document 12 was his blueprint, which he used. That was also introduced at meetings. That's also a very important part, as you will hear, of the investigative and prosecutorial part of the case. And then you have from there, as the people were starting to get arrested, you had new leaders stepping up and kind of morphing the plan into what they wanted it to be. So from Mike's arrest, then Tom Foster took over, and his plan was Operation Popeye, which was a plan that was set for the 13th of September in 2002. And they wanted 18 car bombs to explode in targeted areas, strategic targeted areas across the country. And then from Tom Foster, the next leader was Herman van Rooyen. Now, Herman van Rooyen's group was actually the fugitive group. They went on the run. They were seriously building bombs. They had bomb factories. And his plan was D-Day. And that was set for the 13th of December. It was a Friday afternoon. They wanted to plant 4 300-kilogram bombs at taxi ranks. Now, if you look at it, 13th of December on a Friday, the country closes on the 15th of December. So that means that the taxi ranks would have been bustling. And that was their plan. And that was actually when that group was arrested, the police actually found a fully kitted out bomb on the back of a bakkie, and it was ready to go to a taxi rank. So that is very short.
No, thank you. It's a beautiful book. I like the style that you use in the book. It's very simple to read, very short chapters. When you are going through, you feel the like, and because it's a story, you always look forward to the next chapter. So thank you very much for making it very simple. Even those who are not usual readers enjoy reading the book. Thank you. But Karin, just to close up, can you what were the challenges that you faced in investigating violent extremism? Because this is a topic that everyone that investigates it, especially from that journalistic point of view, always find challenges. I would like to hear what challenges you face, especially for journalists out there who might be interested in also investigating violent extremism and terrorist cases. How did you manage the process to write the book?
It was exceptionally difficult. That's why I started in 2016, and you're only seeing the book now. So first off, I always knew that because the court proceedings were so boring, it was extremely boring for a journalist because you're hearing the same thing over and over. So I knew the book needed to be action-packed. And I always wanted it to be written from the Boeremag's perspective or from the police's perspective, because those are the behind the scenes, and that's what people are interested in. It's how did they do it and how were they stopped? And so I started by printing out the court transcripts, but I identified key Boeremag people, individuals, and then I would go through all of the court records. And from there, I would see, okay, who else is implicated? And then I would basically draw the lines to see who my key people were. And from that, I also identified the state's key witnesses. And that was exceptionally helpful because suddenly I needed to draw a timeline, because in the book, there is a timeline. So I needed to literally just establish who was where and what stage. And that was the most challenging part, was who was where on what day. What were they all doing? And to just write that in a manner that is understandable for a reader, because there's so many names as well. And then I realized that I had a gap. And so I needed to phone Colonel Tolly over here, who I was extremely scared of. I was so intimidated by him in court. Greeted him once at court, and he just gave me a look, and I realized I would never greet him again. And so in 2018, I needed access to the court records in the basements of the Palace of Justice. And I knew he was the only person who would be able to help me. So I needed to phone him. And he was suddenly exceptionally friendly and helpful. And it was because I was not a journalist in his court anymore. That was what it was. And so went to the basements of the Palace of Justice and spent a week there, literally taking my ladder with me to access all of the files, because it's an entire room full. And there I was able to actually see some of the evidence. I needed to see what I was working with, because you can try and work through information on paper, but sometimes you need to see things. And So that was exceptionally helpful as well. And then since Tolly was suddenly so friendly, I needed to get approval from the police for certain questions that I could ask him. And there were only a set few questions that I was allowed to ask him. But it was immensely helpful to the story, to giving color to the story and behind the scenes as well. But then when he retired in 2022, suddenly he was able to divulge everything. And that was when he wrote his experiences of the investigation, which I think just took the book to an entirely new level. To have a person who actually spoke to these people and arrested them and get that into the book.
Beautiful. Thank you very much. I did promise you that you're going to be hearing from the horse's own mouth. And we have with us here on the podium two people who were critical in the case. A journalist like Karin does not make stories, they narrate, meaning someone has to make the stories. And in this particular case, we have Tolly, who was the case maker from the investigative perspective. And we have Dries, who was also one of the story makers from the prosecutorial perspective. We're going to hear from both of them. I would like to start with you, Tolly. I must congratulate you, especially, because you are very present in this. When anyone reads the book, you come out very, very present, almost like a co-author of the book. I wanted to ask you, can you tell us from an investigative perspective, how did this story unfold?
Thank you, Martin. The story started unfolding quite a long time before I got involved. And Dries will tell you a bit later what happened. I got involved in September 2002 by chance into this investigation. Up to then, there was only recruiting taking place by the first group, the Document 12 group, and planning as in a defensive way to defend the Afrikaner and the Boers for an attack. During this first phase, as Karin said, Document 12 phase, Mike de Tooy and his group of leaders started recruiting members for Boeremag by using the prophecies of Sina van Rensburg. That is a person in South Africa version of Nostradamus, where they scared the people in meetings about the night of the long knives when the blacks was going to attack the white people and start killing them in mass. And they start targeting a certain religious group, the Israel Vision group. And by the end of the day, from a meeting of 50 people, they recruited one or two that formed the basis for the organization. As Karin said, on the 13th of September 2002, there was supposed to be a huge attack, Operation Popeye's attack, where the 18 car bombs would have exploded. I got involved just after that due to intelligence and information I received. And then I was requested to lead the investigation team. The investigation team was compiled, and this is taking out the racial part of it, was compiled of only white Afrikaans-speaking detectives. 8 of us from outside Pretoria, and 4 from the head office Pretoria. The 8 of us from outside Pretoria, myself and another guy from Bella, 2 from 3 from Klerksdorp, 1 from Lichtenburg. So it's all ex-murder robbery cops that was called in to assist the investigation in this case. We worked hard on the investigation case in the sense that we did not understand exactly what we are investigating. We were used to farm attacks, murder scenes, blood and guts and this kind of stuff. Suddenly we have to start investigating ideology religion, and that. But just to rewind, way back in '96, I was trained by Dr. Mickey Pistorius in investigation of serial killings and serial rapists, and she laid some basic investigation techniques in my mind that I used in this case. And some of my members were also, like Captain Johan Weiss, was also trained exactly by Mickey for the same investigation of serial killings. And in the process, we used that techniques to investigate this case and the suspects with great success.
No, thank you very much. There's something that came out in what you said, I think towards the end. The fact that there was this shift in your investigation, what you are used to investigating, where you were investigating cases like farm murders and so on. But that was not challenging because these were things that you could see. But the shift in this particular case was that you were now asked to investigate an ideology. And that, for me, is what defines terrorism, right? It's what makes terrorism to be completely different, to separate itself from any other crime. How did you do that? How were you able to investigate this ideology? What kind of techniques did you use?
So, from sort of growing up, I had a very impulsive mind. If I see something, I have to read about it. And I have to understand it. Everything, any aspect of life. And about a month, 2 months before the Boeremag came across my path, I did read a book of Sina van Rensburg, Die Vier Plees van Weer Wapper, by Professor Raad of the Free State. And if you read that book, it's quite difficult to understand it. I usually say if you read that book, you have to have at least 4 glasses of red wine next to you to just get in the mindset. But when I was reading that book, there was some way in the last part of the book, they talk about this revolution, the night of the long knives, and 3 blue letters that will be sent to Parliament the day the Boers take over the country. And on my first scene that I investigated on the 16th of September 2002, when I stumbled on the case, I found 3 blue letters that declares war against the government of South Africa by the Boer folk. So I immediately understood that how important was it for me to understand Sina van Rensburg. Hence, I studied him, and I even wrote a dictation for UNISA on that, on Sina van Rensburg, understanding and reading all the books that was written about him and his visions and predictions, etc. Second part is the Israel Vision religion that we stumbled also upon early in the investigation, and I also had to go and study that the religion and read. I've got a copy of the Bible, the book of Remembrance, book van Herinnering, where I studied the religion to understand how they mind the radicalization of the radical minds work. Later in my life, I investigated Islamic religion, and for the same reason, I had to study the Quran also, just to understand. If you have a suspect in front of you, you're questioning him about right-wing activities, and he tells you, Sina said that, and I can, with confidence, ask him, on what page of which book are you referring to? And then this person is flabbergasted. He said, oh, but I know more. Same quoting from the book of Remembrance. There, it's a verse. I said, no, you interpret that verse. So that to say, I have to study. That is always my advice to an investigating officer. Whenever you work on something, study it. Going back to serial killers, you don't arrest a serial killer. Moses Atole was not arrested immediately after identified him. He was firstly studied. His psychological profile was studied.
Yes.
Kutibu, all those guys are studied, and that's what Mickey Pistorius taught us, and we used it in this case.
Yeah, Van Rensburg is known for his prediction, which is where he drew his respect and probably to create the cult. Did everyone have to read that book? And if so, were they all radicalized the same way? Did every member of Boeremag have to read the book by Van Rensburg? Because I think one of the key things he said, which I think drew his popularity, was when he predicted the fact that apartheid will fall, the black will take over, but the black rule will be short-lived, right? He also predicted that the colored people, the Indians, will also rule for some time, but that the white will have the most challenge or difficulty with the Indian rule, because why? Islam is going to take over. We still haven't seen that yet, even though he also said there will be a time when the Indians will play a critical role in government. They will hold important posts, which is also something that also came true. But why was it easy for Afrikaners to believe this and to think that they will be able to eliminate a whole race and then take over?
Just going back to Siener van Rensburg himself, Siener as a person, or Nicholas van Rensburg, lived in from 18 something to 1922. He was illiterate. He could only read the Bible. He became famous because he was a part of in the Anglo-Boer War of the commander of the well-known General de la Rey, where he, during the flight, he was not captured at all any time during the Anglo-Boer War, because of he could tell de la Rey, but we must get up now, the English are on the way. And they escaped by his word, escaped quite a few attacks of the British columns. Later on, after the war and during the rebellion of 1914, he started seeing these predictions, what they call his discussions with God. But he could not write it down. So he thought he had to write it down. But the problem is that was written in the Old Dutch. And later on, in years, 70, 80 years later on, persons like Raad and Snyman came and they tried to interpret whatever he said in his High Dutch. And that is where it all went wrong. The interpretations given to what was written down by his daughter was completely interpreted wrongly by this book. There's one that I usually use it, one small sentence: I see a woman of blue eyes standing up. That is what he saw. That is his vision. And it's something like that. And if you look at the history, that must be a female leader with blue eyes taking from. If you go back in the history, because this is not only confined to South Africa, go back in the world history, you'll see blue-eyed women being leaders all over the world. Margaret Thatcher, Golda Meir, Ivea Peron, all those, Nada Marcos from the Philippines, all those are fit the description. So who is he speaking about? Going into the most, so this, going back to the question, the members of Boeremag were not required to read the book. There was a video available by Adrian Snyman that they played at every recruiting meeting. We also played it in court. It is very boring. You have to, difficult to stay awake. But in that video, the message of the Night of the Long Knife, the attack on the white people, was pushed and pushed and pushed. And that was the reason, by the video of Adrian Snyman, that convinced and recruited most of the people with his bad interpretations of the real visions.
Great. No, thank you very much for that. This was such a high-risk case for you. How did you manage the investigation, especially with all the intimidations and risks to your own life?
Yes, just going back to some of the suspects, or quite a big lot of suspects, came from the same town that I live, still living now, Bella, used to be called Wombas, about 100 kilometers north of Pretoria. My wife and my children went to school there. My wife worked there. So they were the main targets of intimidation because the suspects, some of the suspect parents were the teachers, some of the suspects' siblings were with them in school. But we as a family took very early in the court case a decision that we will not be intimidated. And so we stood fast, and the police did provide us with armed guards in front of my house in Bella Bella for 10 years. I myself and my team and I moved into a safe house here in Pretoria during the investigation. I had physical protection for about 3 or 4 days, and then I asked him to withdraw the physical protection. I can look after myself, to look at my stature, and I put it in the hand of God. If it suits him and I must be killed, then I must be killed. That is so. But I'm still sitting here. So yes, the intimidation was very, very hard, but more onto my family than on me. That is it.
No, I'm glad you said that, because in the book, Karin described you as one of those fearless traditionalists when it comes to investigation, that you pursue your goal without any fear, without any relentless. So thank you for that. And I think it was key for you to do what you did, and especially for the case to get the kind of positive result that it did. But I wanted to ask you, where are we with the Boeremag? Is a threat still there? Do you think that your investigation brought this to an end?
The Boeremag as a grouping is done with. They do not exist anymore. All of the accused has been released on parole with very strict parole conditions. Some of them reaching up to 20, 40 something, very strict parole conditions. But the right-wing threat in South Africa as a whole will never disappear. That will be always there. The strive for by a very small rim group of Africans, white people, that still want to rule over themselves, still want to reinstate apartheid, will always be there. The current government, and as well as the parties in parliament, does not do good to take away that fear from the white people, and hence there will always be a threat to South Africans' stability by them. You can see it. It goes in sequences. The Boeremag was in 2002. In 2012, we had the attempt of the Mangaung Elective Conference in Bloemfontein, when where the right-wing group planned to bomb the Big Six, or the tent where the meeting or the election would have been held. And then in 2019, again, the Crusaders group that was also planned to overthrow the government by means of armed conflict. So that will come again. We must be sure that will come again. And our intelligence service, our police, must just be vigilant and keep the eye out for them.
Yeah, as you mentioned, there are more right-wing groups. It's not just the Boeremag. You've mentioned the Crusader, which was also investigated and prosecuted, and you are saying that they will always be there. But I want to ask you this question, which hopefully will be my last question to you. First, you and your investigative team receive the National Best Measure Case Investigation Team Award in 2014. What lessons do you draw from investigating a high-profile terrorist case of this nature? And what advice will you give, especially given the fact that you said just now that the threat will always be there? How can South Africa successfully manage this threat so that it can remain where it is without further escalating?
If you read the book, you'll see in the beginning of my input in the book, there was huge struggles between the investigating group and the intelligence group. They wanted to trust each other. During the years, we managed to break down those walls, those silos. If you look at that 9/11, the cause of 9/11 was silos that the different law enforcement agencies worked. South Africa had exactly the same problem. We managed to break down those silos, those walls, by forming a single entity in South Africa consisting of all of government approach, looking at terrorism, also looking at other threats in the country, not only terrorism, but we were involved in terrorism. And maintaining that structure will be the success for in the future to counter any such threat, and to address any such threat in the early stage, not allow it to escalate out of hand and do damage control afterwards. So that South Africa's counterterrorism strategy that we have since 2013 is a 5-pillar strategy. Of the last one is dealing with the consequences. The first 4 is all about prevention, mitigation, and combating. So we never want to get to pillar 5 or dealing with the consequences, picking up bodies after explosives and that kind of stuff. So by maintaining our strategy is the most important part of securing a safe South Africa.
It is indeed a critical strategy. Prevention is better than cure. That's what the wise people say. And you are saying that this is what we need to follow in South Africa to maintain the threat at the level in which it is. And that we'll need to continue to monitor the group to make sure that we intervene at the right time. Thank you very much for that, Tolly. Let me move to you now, Dries. You were the prosecutor of this high-profile case. Can you give us a brief overview of what the case was all about and how the prosecutor team was selected and structured?
Yes, Martin. By the end of 2001, the Director of Public Prosecutions received a relatively small docket coming from the catch unit of the police. And this docket contained some versions of document 12 and evidence about a few recruitment meetings. And it was then allocated to me. From there on, we decided to have the first 3 accused, including Mr. Moderator, who was the leader at that time, arrested. And they were arrested, and we set a trial date for terrorism charges in the regional court for more or less August 2002. But between then, as Karin explained, there was a leadership change, and it escalated. So by about August, we had about 6 more people arrested, mainly members of the South African Defence Force. And at that time, we knew that this trial will need to go to the High Court. So Advocate Paul Fick, SC, was appointed as the leader of the team. And I must say that Advocate Fick is one of the most competent prosecutors I have ever seen in my life. So a very important aspect was the meeting of about the 13th of September 2002 at Lichtenburg. Dr. Let's Pretorius was arrested after that meeting, and the police then also found the Lenong truck there. That was a truck that belonged to Dr. Pretorius, and it was full of ammunition and all other things. Now, then we knew this is really going to be a big thing. And I very clearly remember a meeting at the DPP offices on a Saturday morning shortly after that. And that is the first time I met Tolly. There were many important people from the police and the prosecuting authority. So there, Tolly was appointed to be the lead investigator. Paul Fick was the lead prosecutor. And I was also a prosecutor on the team, together with 2 other prosecutors that was selected. From there on, Martin, at that time, prosecuted guided investigation, as we know it today, wasn't really practiced in the NPA. It was still something people talked about. And so, but under the leadership of Advocate Paul Fick, we literally moved from the DPP offices to the basement of the Palace of Justice, where we shared offices with the investigators. The prosecutors were divided into two teams because we were in the investigation phase.
Okay.
Prosecutors were divided into two teams. Paul and Advocate Peter Light in one team, and myself and Advocate Susanna Red in the other team. And the police were divided into teams. And then a prosecutor team will be matched with an investigating team to do a particular investigation, interview witnesses in a particular part of the country. Everybody will return. We will have meetings, sort out what we got from the witnesses, where we're going. But at that time, you must remember that bombs were still exploding. Not one of us imagined what a big job it would become. There are so many people that played a role. The forensic laboratory, for instance, those people work 24 hours a day. Get the reports out to investigate the bomb scenes. And the fugitive group was still at large, and that eventually reached a peak with the arrest of the people on Strijkbaan. It was such excellent investigation work, but it also meant, that we already knew that the trial will probably be very long. We also knew at that time that the defense team, the different defense teams will be very strong because they were all very seasoned advocates. In fact, one defense team were actually specialists in terrorist prosecutions. You must also remember that in December 2002, the bombs were still exploding. By the end of March 2003, the state was ready for the prosecution. So that was the investigation was just done in the most immaculate way. If I can talk about the relationship between the prosecutors and the investigators, there wasn't much time for nonsense. And Tolly was an exceptional good leader, and so was Paul Fick. And it was literally like a machine that just had to work at 100% capacity. Righto, if we eventually, when the trial started in 2002, we had a way of working in that, first of all, the accused were divided amongst the prosecutors. So right from the start, we knew which prosecutor will concentrate on which accused, and included in that the witnesses that will bring the most evidence against those particular accused. So we went to court, always at least two prosecutors at a time, one leading the evidence or doing the cross-examination, and the other one as a backup. On the other hand, Advocate Fick, there was a running record. And that record, he worked through it every day. And then he would kind of class the evidence against a particular accused. So at any time of the trial, we knew exactly what evidence was presented against which accused. That it was just such a perfect way of working, because it also minimized preparation. You know, when you also knew exactly what more evidence is needed against a particular accused. But obviously, it took a lot of work. But the benefit was that when it was time to prosecute a particular or to cross-examine a particular accused, the prosecutor doing it had a document with all the evidence that was presented against that accused, witness name, page number in that enormous record, line number, you know, and before every accused, there was also a discussion. So the prosecutor responsible for the cross-examination knew exactly what he had to get out of that accused. What I can say about the case in general is that the security was always very at the court, very good security, but the relationship between or maybe the lack of relationship or the animosity between the prosecutors and the defense team just never relaxed. That continued for the complete duration of the trial, which was strange, you know, because I've done a number of big cases, and in the beginning you're not so friendly to each other, but it does relax as time goes on. Yes, people often ask me, but why did it take so long? Why did it take so long? Martin, I can say that the state's case was presented in less than a third of the time. There were so many in limine applications and fair trial applications. You know, some of the judgments given by the presiding judge is still very important for the criminal justice system today. Very prominent judgments that he gave on all these in limine applications. There were strange applications. You know, some of the accused claimed at some stage, claimed the status of prisoners of war. And I think if you count all the in limine applications, it must be more than 50. So, yes, what I've learned from this trial, you know, one thing I can say, it is all in the preparation. And the key people in the Boeremag trial were very, very competent people. That is, the two leaders, and obviously I must also say that the presiding judge was one of the most experienced judges in the division. But we really did, you know, we were always just so well prepared. And the cooperation, that very first prosecutor-guided investigation between Tolly and Advocate Fick, I really think we moved the goalposts with this trial.
No, thank you very much for that. I think you touch upon quite a number of questions that I was going to ask you. But what I'm going to ask you in follow-up to what you just said, Tolly said something which distinguishes terrorism from any other crime. the issue of ideology. And also, right now, the topic is about terrorist financing. If we were to look at, for example, the Financial Action Task Force, which says that if we are able to target terrorist financing, we'll be able to defeat terrorism. In your prosecution, what were the charges? Did you include the charges of ideology and the charges of terrorist financing? Were they included in your charges?
Martin, no, not in the Boeremag charge sheet. They were charged for high treason as the first and most prominent charge. And then they were also in the alternative, if I can put it that way, charge for terrorism and an array of charges relating to possession of the ammunition and firearms and so on. But eventually, every one of them were convicted on the high treason charge. At that time, terrorist financing was not so prominent, and the Boeremag members were not charged in any way for terrorist financing. Shortly after that, I think, Tolly, with cases that you've done after that, terror financing became prominent and a big problem, if I can put it that way.
Not to kind of interject here.
Sure, yeah.
The Boeremag guys group was all of them were the whole Boeremag organization was self-funded. The Pretoria family lost the whole kingdom that they had, the hospitals and all that, by using their own money. The only illegal part of financing was one of our accused later state witness that bought false 200 rand notes and gave it to the group to spend. They only spent one 200 rand false note at a church fair in a Free State, and we even recovered that false note also later on. But you must keep in mind that terror financing is only addressed by the Octatara that came into place 2004. For this case, briefly used the Old Terrorism Act from 1954.
Yes.
Yeah, the Old Terrorism Act of 1954, where the terror financing was never addressed in. So hence, the terror financing was not part of this indictment at all.
Yeah. Okay, let me ask you just my last question, then we can open the floor. If you were to prosecute this case again, what will you change?
You know, Martin, at the beginning, I didn't know that this case would take up more than a quarter of my professional career. But I must say, I learned so much because after the Boeremag, I prosecuted a number of big cases at a different unit where I'm now. And I learned a lot about directing the investigation and so on. So I can say I don't think I'll change anything. It was a success story, so I won't change anything.
Great. Thank you very much. So we've heard from the three speakers. We've heard about the investigation of the Boeremag case. We've heard about some of the successes, some of the challenges. We've also just heard about the prosecution, especially why did the prosecution take so long, 10 years of prosecution, which is often very, very difficult. It often costs a lot of money, but I think Dries and his team were able to go through this successfully. Now, I would like to open the floor for questions, comments, from the floor and from those joining us online. Any questions, comments? Yes, sir.
I'm just curious, what role did the old commando system play in the recruitment and
The
ideology?
commander.
Commando system?
Okay.
Yeah, what role did that play in recruitment?
Okay.
I'll be able to answer that.
Okay. Yeah. Totally, you
So-
can take that while.
So during this time, the South African Defence Force was still in place, and they had also the reserve members that was formed in commandos all over the rural area. Where you are farmer today and tonight you are a soldier, you're patrolling the area.
Yes, please go ahead.
And those commando members had access to arms, ammunition, automatic arms, ammunition, and they were the target of Mike Toy and his first recruiting group. And they're very successful. If you look at the Harold van Rooyen and the last group that planted the bombs, all of them were commando members. They were armed with R4 commando state weapons. And also during the planning, they called, even from the beginning, with Moderator van Wyk and those guys, accused number 4, they said they must create shadow commandos within the commandos. They have to recruit in the commando the radical persons and arm themselves with the commandos' weapons and armory, and use that for the revolution. So, and then by the end of the day, this organization, the Boeremag, and their actions in misusing the commando system, caused the commando system to be shut down. That was the main reason for the government to shut down the commando system.
Great. Thank you very much. Are you satisfied? Okay, excellent. Yes, online, any question, comments? Also, yeah, yes, Willem.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation. I think back to Tolly again. Something that I think is very important that maybe due to time constraints we touch on is the crucial role of intelligence and how you manage to integrate intelligence and to harmonize that with your investigation. And the second question is you as an investigator. We've got various investigators that joined us online, and maybe your lessons learned in how to deal. I know you touched on it a little bit, but it must have taken a tremendous toll on you and your family. How did you manage to marry that and to negotiate that, especially for the period that this trial lasted, and also the threat that you and your family were under when during this investigation? How did you manage, and what can you recommend maybe for the current establishment, and how to look after the investigators as well? Thank you.
Yeah, and just to add to the question that Willem has raised, thanks for that, Willem. Maybe we'll also hear from you, Dries, in terms of the role that intelligence played in your prosecution. How were you able to convert intelligence into evidence? Thank you. So you go first, Dolly.
Thank you. In the beginning, when I got involved, there was huge animosity between the intelligence group and the investigation group. It is so that for example, is after the arrest of the last group, we found a GPS that had all the waypoints, and the GPS was by one of the intelligence technicians, and the result of the GPS was handed to intelligence. I'm not named persons, and intelligence a section or division bought a lot of GPSs, and they sent all the gatherers to the GPS waypoints that we found recovered, and they submitted with statements to me on what they found there. When we called them to court to come and testify, suddenly they were undercover. they cannot testify in court. Say, sorry, my friend, your name is already on the. So he broke down in the process, not trying to degrade anybody. In the process of this investigation, he broke down the silos and the mistrust between the intelligence services and the investigating services. And I'm not talking about only the crime intelligence of the police, also the state security or the NI, and also defense intelligence. All those walls between the intelligence services and the investigators was broke down, and we amalgamated in one group that looks after the security of the company. This case was groundbreaking for that. There was a certain structure, as I previously said, formed, and that's still looking at the security of the country. For us, for me as an investigating officer, it was important to get intelligence from the ground. And now there's a cycle of intelligence so intelligence that you get from the ground have to be turned by the investigating officer into information, and then in cooperation with the prosecutor, be turned into evidence. So the raw intelligence I received on the ground is never reaching the prosecutor. After I converted it into information, we can discuss it and we present it as evidence after conversion of that. So the intelligence was extremely important for us. When you look at the time when the two persons took long leave from the court, they escaped from the court, from Royer and Gous. At that time, we broke down all those barriers between each other. I was working hand in glove with our intelligence services. The reason they only saw me every now and then at the court, I was mostly with the intelligence teams in the field for 8 months, when eventually we rearrested the two. And I think that was also the indication and the standard operation procedure from there on after that operation, where I was trusted to sit in with deep cover agents and listen to their feedbacks, get into helicopters, fly to farms with the special task force, jump out of helicopters, nearly killed myself with a medic bag of 30 kilograms landing on my head, running into the house, finding well-known right-wing persons inside the house, arresting them, that kind of stuff. So it was a big, huge adventure. Coming to Willem's question about detectives that's online is commitment. That is, and if you have a big case like this to investigate, that usually that's a threat to any investigating officer. But I usually use the words: how do you eat the elephant? Bite by bite, piece by piece. So one must never look at the investigation like this in a whole and say, geez, here's a whole big mountain in front of me. You must start by picking up one rock, and then the next rock, and then the next rock, and then eventually you'll get to the end of the case. Managing your family depends on yourself. And my team that I had with me, my first word to them is, we are here to work. We stay together in a safe house. We are here to work. We are not here to play. If I excuse you on a Friday to go home, to Claresthorp or to whoever your family is, you go to your family. You don't go to a bar or to something. So you go to your family, spend quality time with your family. And I can say proudly that my whole investigation team, even today, they all are still married to the same woman.
That's good.
Even me, 41 years to the same woman, still married. So that is commitment. But that is not only commitment from the investigation, that is a commitment from the whole family. You must, the person that is you married and made a promise in the church with, also have to commit into this world that you are working and understand that. The safety of I did address it. The threat against my family is a question of, and all the rest of the members also, they did not allow them to be intimidated. I'll refer back to General Mattis in American Congress when they asked him, how do you deal with battlefield stress?
Yes.
The battlefield stress.
Stress, yes.
And he said, "Oh, I don't get battlefield stress, I cause battlefield stress." I do not allow me to be intimidated. I intimidate. That is
It's very good. I think that's a very good point. Yes, in the book, Karin, you say there were 200 witnesses. I'd like to hear from you, Dries. How did you manage these 200 witnesses? I know for the investigators, you were able to provide protection. What about the witnesses? How did you deal with them?
Yes.
And to your own life, because I mean, it was not just the investigator that was threatened. I think everyone that was part of the state team was threatened. How did you manage it from the prosecutorial perspective?
Martin, thank you. You know, we can talk about this trial for days because there are so many people that contributed to the success. As we consulted with witnesses, there was also a police team, particularly Professor Gerard Labuschagne, who Dolly consulted, deciding on who to make the 204 witnesses, that is, witnesses that or accused that becomes state witnesses. But there were also many people that had to be placed in the witness protection program. Dolly, I think there was about almost 20 people or so.
Yeah, the big state IS was 20 persons in the witness protection program.
Yes. Now, placing so many witnesses into a protection program was challenging on its own. And the witness protection program is managed by the NPA. It was also at that time. But so it was also a new challenge for their capacity. And, you know, I think we can proudly say that the South African witness protection program is very good. So, but the witnesses were in the program, and they had to be delivered at a certain day and time and place at the court, and they had to be protected there. In some instances, the prosecution team would go, the police will arrange for a meeting at a certain point, and then they'll take the prosecutors from there to the safe house where the witness was. And then, because we had to consult with these witnesses, in general, about the protection, Martin, the judge was very well protected by the police, and the prosecutors also at some time received very good protection until they were very sure that there was no longer a threat. So,
Thank you. Thank you for that. Any question online, comments? Yes, let's come to you. Or then, yeah, the lady first, then we go to Henry.
Hi, I've got one question actually for each of the panelists. Karin, nice to meet you in person. We've been communicating on social media. So what's not clear from what's been said so far? So these bombs go off, and then how does that now translate into taking over power? Was the point to take over power? And how do we get from setting off the bomb? I don't see what the connection is actually to the actual political goal. And then Colonel Tori, sorry, I didn't catch your surname. Lichtenberg, sorry. It's very disconcerting to hear about the kind of ammunition and the kind of bombs that this group had access to. How did they get access to this one? Did they make it themselves, and where did the knowledge come from to make those bombs? Because I mean, that can cause serious damage. Yeah, and then Advocate van Rensburg. I see that the panels at great pains to stay away from the politics of this whole thing. But I mean, there's a very clear political element to all of these things. These crimes exist within a particular political context. And I liked what Dr. Iwi said at the beginning, where he was saying that this terrorism was fought with the rule of law. We're sitting in a country now where politics and power is more contested than what it has been before, ever since we've now had the GNU, and it will probably be more so in 2029 and 2034 and so on. We no longer have that clear majority. And so acts that could fall close to treason, I think it's more possible now. Do we have enough in terms of the law and in terms of the judiciary and how we deal with all these things to actually counteract these sorts of political crimes? Because these are crimes against the state. And the state, as a citizen in the state, I need to know the state has the capacity to actually protect itself against these threats. So I'm sorry, that's a very long question, but it's difficult to ask that question in a short way.
Okay. Let's take this set of questions. I think for you, Karin, there's one for Tolly, there's one for you, Dries. So please go ahead in that order. Then we'll take the question that has been posted online. So let's start.
Thank you for being here and thank you for your question. So the link between the bombs and the political agenda that they had. So the bombs were to destabilize the country. That's the key thing of it. But what the Boeremag's intention was that they wanted the Black people of South Africa to see how incompetent the ANC was and that they could not respond to this destabilization. So then the Black people will see the white people as being able to take command of the country. But what the Boeremag would then do is they would literally chase Black people out of the country via the N1 to Zimbabwe and Indian people down via the N3 to Durban to then board ships to India. As absurd as that sounds, that was their plan, to reclaim the country.
So indeed, it was about creating chaos.
Yes.
And in the midst of that chaos, you remember when there's an insurrection, the government is no longer strong. And then it will be easy for them to take over because there will be chaos all over. People will be fighting each other, right? As I said in my introduction, that they actually envisage an all-out racial war. And it will be in the midst of that racial war that the white will now come in, take over, and then send the blacks out and the color people. So that was the intention, as Karin said. It's well described in the book. So thank you for that. Tolly.
Thank you. Your question to me is how did they procure all the weaponry? So as Dries said, this case changed quite a lot of laws in South Africa. The first one that they changed is the firearm law. In that previously, in a person, if you have a license for a firearm, you can buy an unlimited amount of ammunition for that firearm, which they did. Now you can only have in possession 200 rounds per caliber in your possession. That law was changed in the meantime. So in this case, the second place they procured ammunition from, as well as arms, is from the commando system, state-owned weapons. And then the explosives that they use was homemade explosive. Could you call it ANFO, ammonium nitrate, that is made from normal commercial fertilizer. Sorry, the word they say escaped me. Fertilizer, and Willem behind you will explain you exactly how we compose that recipe. Was used by Timothy McVeigh in the Oklahoma bombings, exactly the same recipe. And the Boeremag, the person that's supposed to also what we would have liked to sit here with us, was the bomb builder. He got the recipe on the internet in the book called the Anarchist Cookbook, where the exact recipe for ANFO is available. So yes, that is where how they procured. Today you can the fertilizer is available at any farming. Every farmer today have huge access to huge amount of that. It's a very short process to convert it to explosives.
Great.
Yes, I can just say, we led a lot of evidence because quite a number of the bombs did not explode. The day they were arrested, they had something like a 300 kilogram bomb at the back of the bucket. It was intended to be placed in Marabastad. And the evidence was that if that bomb exploded, that it would have wiped down the whole Marabastad up to where Church Square is about. But they were not all that clever. I think they didn't compact it well enough. To answer your question, you posed to me, is present day South Africa, there's a lot of investigation into terror financing, and quite a number of institutions and banks and so doing those investigations. When we talk about capacity, I think we are all always worried about capacity, but I can say, when things turn into a reality, when they, like the Boeremag case, if somebody asked me before the case started, do we have the capacity to do this, I would have said I doubt. So I think that we have a way of providing the capacity when it's needed. Thank you.
Are you satisfied? Okay, great. Let's take two questions online. Oh, yes. No. Please come in. Sorry. Come in, Henry. There was also a hand there. Come in, then we'll take questions online.
Yeah, I think the first question is probably for Karin, but and it's difficult to get my head around. Right? So this ideology and the readings of Senior van Rensburg's predictions and prophecies and whatever, as you rightly said, it was open for interpretation, and we were not dealing with idiots as the accused. Well, not all of them, I would assume. However, did some of the, let's call it more intelligent, actually use the I'm trying to think what the word is in English, but the superstitions of the less intelligent people to radicalize them and to convince them to do this? Because you've spoken to them and interviewed them. That's sort of right. And then the second question, probably for Tolly, but in subsequent investigations on right-wing groups in South Africa, we found links with international actors. Did you ever find any international links to the Boeremag that they not necessarily funded, but that they supported the Boeremag in South Africa?
Very good question. In terms of your investigation.
Shall I start?
Yeah, you can
Okay.
start.
If you want to add anything, please feel free
Yes.
to. So on the Senior, it's an interesting time in the country when this happened. So this was around 2001. And one of the key things that I discovered with the research was the white Afrikaner man was looking for identity, because suddenly so much was stripped from him. He didn't know where he belonged in the South African society. So at these meetings, it was kind of like because they were addressing the increase in farm attacks. They were talking about the land reform in Zimbabwe and what was happening there. There was also the spike in protests, which now 20 years later, we expect strike season. We've got that context to understand it. But at that time, it was very new. So they were building on the fear around all of that. And it's essentially the people who could see the parallels they were trying to draw between what this video was saying of what CNET sees happening and what they had told people to believe. They made those parallels cross until they finally believed it. But it's also, so Mike du Toit, he was a lecturer in philosophy, extremely philosophical person. So his mind is like, yeah, he just thinks on a different level. And it was interesting while I was actually in Marikana, and we had the ANC's upcoming elective conference in Mangaung that same year as well, in December. And one day I had popped in between Marikana to quickly go and see what was happening in the courtroom. And he called me over and he had a paper folded up again. And he unfolded it and it was a vision of Sinesh saying, I see black smoke in this certain area behind a mountain, and then I see a mass of black people gathering. I stood there. I had my own context to interpret it. And I said, okay, well, Mike, looking at this, you could be trying to tell me that the smoke is burning in Marikana and the black group are descending on Mangaung. And he was flabbergasted. He almost fell backwards. And it was because I had context in my own mind, but that doesn't mean that that is what CNET meant. So I hope that explains.
Yeah, there's another point you make in the book, which is that it was about domination. And that, you know, the white supremacists or the white have lost power, and some could not believe it. Some could not take it. And therefore, it was this few that's created the cross of the Boeremag. And therefore, it was about reclaiming that power that they have lost.
So was this then racially based mostly?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Completely.
Yes.
That was not because of the Siener van Rensburg's prophecies and that
So
rubbish. It
it's
was completely racially.
exactly. So it was two-pronged. It was Siener van Rensburg and the Israel Vision. So if you look at the Israel Vision movement, it's these people believe that they are the 10 lost tribes of Israel. And so when you look at that, they essentially believe that they are a superior race. They should not be mixing with other races, and that they are God's chosen tribe. And when you look at all of the fundamentals of that, it's white supremacy, it's racism. So that is 100% what it was based on. It was Israel Vision with Siener van Vision, kind of like a propeller of sorts.
It was not just that vision. We found cases where families were radicalizing family members, right? And I think that was the most powerful tool. So those family members that were able to inculcate the teachings or the vision of the Israel vision and Sinner's vision were able to convince other family members, right? And that's where radicalization became even more profound than in other cases. Tolly, you want to say something on this?
Yes, just on this question that some of them misuse. So Mike du Toit is and still was and still is agnostic. Doesn't believe in any godly figure, but he misused the Israel vision. This Israel vision that he doesn't believe in himself, but he used that to recruit. Also, he used the tools of Siener van Rensburg to recruit. So he used that tools. But going back to your question to me about any foreigners involved in the Boeremag, no. They had two main enemies. The first is an other color than himself, and the second is the British, the English. So everybody, because of the Anglo-Boer War, so they would not have any contact with any other person that doesn't speak Afrikaans to assist them. They were based on recreating Afrikaans Volksstaat with no assistance from anybody else. Maybe the Germans, that was, but we could never, we were looking for a link to the outside South Africa, because we as an investigation team and the prosecution team would have liked to travel somewhere overseas just to, but we really looked for that link, but we could not find it, unfortunately.
Yeah, just to come in there, especially for those online, you will have seen a very short evaluation form. Please complete that. We really value your comments. It helps us to improve on our event. So please complete so that next time when you attend our event, you will find it much improved. Thank you very much. Yes, thank you, Tolly. Do you have something to add to this?
I just wanted to add a little bit to the question. In my experience, it was a strange mixture of culture, religion, and politics. As Tolly mentioned, the English of the Boer War was still the enemy on the one hand. And so every one of the accused, or let me rather say, the way I experienced it is that they were there for different reasons, some for the politics, some for the religion, some for the culture, but this mixture was always there. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So let me take two questions online. I will start with the question from Pete Pistorius. He says, if possible, can you allude to how decisions were made to use certain agents, such as J.C. Smith, as witness, but others were not identified or called? I think this might be to both of you.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes.
For instance, like Mr. J.C. Smith or any other of the Section 204 witnesses, to decide who to choose to become state witnesses. And as I said, we obviously carefully considered what the person can contribute to the case. And whenever you work with a Section 204 witness, you must also be sure that witness will in fact make a contribution to the case, because he's an accused. But for that purposes, we also consulted, for instance, Dr. Gerard Laviskachny and the investigation team. So it was a whole process. And particularly in this matter, we were very successful with every Section 204 witness report.
No, thank you for that, Dolly.
Just on the, we must there should use distinction between the agent and the Section 204 witness.
Yeah.
The agent is a person that is infiltrated into the organization to gather intelligence. And the 204 witness is an insider after the fact that you use, who committed the crimes with the suspects, and you use him as a witness. As we said, there's a whole process for us how to identify the 204 witness. But in the Boeremag case, there was only 3 agents that was infiltrated. It was infiltrated into organization, but they were chosen by the group themselves. And they reported to us. The first one is the person that Mr. Piet Pretorius, Advocate Piet Pretorius mentioned, is J.C. Smith.
Yes.
The whole case, the first part of the case was based on his, and he did not infiltrate the group. He was invited into the group by Adrian van Wyk, accused number 4.
Yes.
And then he was an old agent from way back. He completely moved himself out of the intelligence service. He was recruited, and once he received the information, he saw what the information value is, he reported back to his old handler, and hence he was infiltrated back into the group. First Holshausen in Lowveld, exactly the same. He was recruited as to be a member of the Boeremag by Mike de Tooy, Andre de Tooy, and Royko du Plessis. And he reported to Defense Intelligence, and then he was recruited and placed as a cover agent into the group. The last one was Otto Gardner, the one that enabled us to arrest the bomb squad, the bomber group. We saw him at the disruptive operation, and then he was recruited by intelligence, and he was called by the Boeremag group, especially Wilhelm Pretorius, to assist them in the 13th of December's bombings, and hence he acted then as out of the mission as an undercover agent to give that information and enable us to arrest them that night there in Pretoria.
Absolutely. I think it's quite clear. So many factors determine who the state calls as a witness and who he doesn't. But it must be a witness that can contribute positively to the case. Let's take the second question online. This one is from my colleague, Elizabeth Masson. She asked earlier, I think this is to you, Tolly. Earlier, you mentioned that there will always be a group of people that try to overthrow the government because of fear. What practical measures can the South African government take to reassure the Afrikaans community that white Afrikaners are not a risk of marginalization or eradication? Good question, Elizabeth.
Yeah, you need a fairy with something to get that. That's a very good question, a very difficult question to answer. That's the animosity between the races of Africa is a generational thing.
Yes,
it will die out in the generations to come. It will not be. There's no magic fix for it right now. I always said maybe my grandchildren will be the first step into the generation that will forgive, and then on the other side of the color spectrum also will start forgetting about being victims of apartheid and being forced of apartheid. They will start losing that knowledge. But if you look at the international politics in America now, the people calling for retribution about stuff that happened 200-300 years ago. They still didn't forget about it. So the only way that we will protect the white and marginalized, bring back the marginalized whites into our community, that's going to be a generational thing. There's no quick fix for that.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. It's a political question, and I think it's something that democracy can respond to, because as the South African democracy strengthens, as it grows, where different communities begin to realize that they have equal opportunities, I think people will start, that feeling of marginalization is going to disappear. If you take, for example, I think we are now having white parties, the DA, being elected in key cities, right? I think the only position the DA hasn't held in the past or since 1994 is the presidency, right? So they are growing there, and I believe that it will happen because when it comes to the provincial level, when it comes to the municipality levels, there is progress coming up. And I think that progress is going to eliminate that feeling of marginalization. So for me, it's more about the political process. As we continue to build and strengthen democracy in South Africa, where everyone has equal opportunity, I believe that we'll all feel like we can win whatever position we're going for. Thank you. Yes, we still have about 15 minutes. Let's hear from you. Then Henry, you want to come in again? Okay.
My question is for Cornelly. Could you please elaborate on what the role of psychology and profiling played in the investigation and how it contributed to the case?
Wow.
Yes, that was, thank you for the question. That was one of the out of the box things that we worked on. I like to think out of the box. It's just so. Being trained in psychological motivated crimes by Mickey Pistorius and also working with Gerard Lopes-Kaghni for many years. When we call them the bomb squad, when they disappeared and the bombs start exploding, I always knew that we're going to arrest him. There was no question in my mind, we're going to arrest him. And when you arrest any group of people, you have to have an insider in the group that you can utilize to get information or evidence from. And I went to Gerard and I gave him, he knows exactly about the Senior van Rensburg as an audition. And I gave him statements on all six of the persons that was the bomb squad and how their personalities was. I asked him, give me the persons that will crack under interrogation or interviewing. And he gave me two names, Rudy Gous and Dion Kraus. He said they have low profiles in the group, they will be the ones. And it worked. The night of the 10th, Valhalla Pretorius and Rudy Gous were arrested in North Park. I gave Valhalla Pretorius to one of my other investigators, Johan Weiss, and I took Rudy Gous to the site, Marius and myself, interviewed him. The moment he said, hello, hello, yes, uncle, then I know already it is there. And from there on, within minutes, he told me a lot of stuff that led to solving part of the case. And the next morning, we flew in the process of following up Rudy Gous's information, we flew to Margaret, Port Edward and back. And then the two other persons was arrested on the bakkie of the car bomb in it. And once I opened the back of the van they were kept in, I saw Herman van Rooyen and Dion Kraus. I greeted Herman van Rooyen because I know him very well. He's from my hometown. And I said to Kraus, come with me. And we walked into my office at Picture there, and 4 or 5 minutes later, we had the GPS reading for where the factory was up north in the Pope. But that is due to Gerard Lopes-Kaghni's input for me, how to approach them psychologically and who to pick. Don't waste your time on the other people. They will not cooperate. These two people, concentrate on them exactly 100% on them.
Can I maybe just supplement the answer?
Sure.
It played a very important role. Professor Lopes-Kaghni and his unit, because there were also other people from his unit involved. They were also consulted by the prosecutors as the trial progressed, to take certain crucial decisions. So they really played an important role.
Okay. Are you satisfied? Oh, great. Yes, go ahead. Then we'll come to you, Henry, please.
I just wanted to ask you, Mr. Vlechten-Berg, regarding your earlier mention of steps being taken to prevent the Boeremag from happening again. Is it possible for you to further elaborate on the measures that's being taken to prevent this?
Yes, as I said, our South Africa's counter-terrorism strategy is a 5-pillar strategy. The first one is understanding the threat. Second one is preventing the threat. Third one is mitigating the threat. Fourth one is combating, and the first one is dealing with the consequences. The very most important one is the first one, understanding the threat. If you understand the threat, understand what you're dealing with. For me, as I said, I studied Senior van Rensburg, I studied the Israel Vision. Later on, I studied the Quran, I studied all the different. I had another investigation where kind of David Koresh sect was involved, and I studied their religion. So that is understanding the threat what they're dealing with, understanding ISIS, Islamic State threat in South Africa. That is the most important thing. And once you understand the threat, you can start by preventing it and mitigating it. That is the three most combating and dealing with the consequences must be the last outcome. And that it can only be done by all of government and all of role players' involvement in one structure, speaking to each other. And as I said, we broke down those silos and broke down those walls. And when I left in 2002, the structures was in place and are still in place to prevent something like this happening again. Not only on the right-wing side, also on all the other possible terrorist organizations in South Africa. Answer your question.
Very good. You want to add something?
No, thank you.
Okay. Yes, Henry, please.
Thanks, Martin. And it's because you have three panelists, so I can ask a third question. And this is for Dries. When you're dealing with 204 witnesses who are actually from the other side also committing treason when they testifying against their own people, how did you manage to convince them to testify? Was it basically just the fear of going to jail? Or was there, how did you manage to get those people to become really good 204 witnesses and not, eventually deviate from their testimony and then get prosecuted afterwards anyway, just because they might have wanted to stuff up the whole trial?
Yes. Henry, I can answer you this way. First of all, the potential Section 204 witnesses were identified by Dolly and also with Professor Gerard Labskagni's input. So we were fairly sure that we approached the right people. And we called many Section 204 witnesses. Each one of them, I must say, I am convinced that by the time they testified, they had a far better perspective. And it was obviously very difficult for them. I can think of Dion Kraus. Dion Kraus was actually the perfect Section 204 witness. He was in the witness protection program, and Dion Kraus was not one of the most educated of the accused. But I can tell you, I personally presented his evidence. Now, I told you that we consulted very well. And we were very good, well prepared. But Dion Kraus testified for substantial time. And then there was a break for some other application. And he only returned to the witness box months later. And then the defense would ask him the same questions, and he would give the same answers. So then the defense accused the state of providing the witness with a record in the meantime, but that wasn't so. Every one of the 204 witnesses, now I'm thinking, for instance, Mr. Lawrence du Plessis, who was a very prominent leader in the beginning, went through a process of change. And it was interesting to see the witness, like Mr. du Plessis was a leader in the organization, now testifying on behalf of the state. And when he is cross-examined, there are, that there are only a few methods of cross-examination, one of which is win the witness over. And a lot of the defense advocates tried that strategy on Mr. du Plessis. And there were times when you could see in his eyes that he's not sure whether he's doing the right thing. But eventually, I think every one of the 2 or 4 witnesses definitely went through a process of change before they testified.
But I think especially the talents of the Harrys and the Louisas of the world, when they cross-examined those witnesses, probably went into their the fact that they were actually now committing treason against their own people.
Yeah.
So you had to probably then pick these guys really well, knowing who was going to defend eventually, right?
That is why I said, with the prosecution team, we tried to match the defense team, especially the specialists in political and terrorism cases that were in the defense team. But we picked them well, the 12 witnesses.
I could just add to that this Dion Kraus, way back when, in the beginning, when I identified him as a possible 204 witness, he asked me what must he say in court. I say, you just stick to the truth. And after this break in his testimony, I think Victoria's People's Story just asked a question there online also. He put it to him, what did Colonel Tolly tell you? And he said, he told me to tell the truth. And that was his answer to a very long question. That is it. And Dion Kraus just told the truth. Nothing else. Didn't deviate from it because his mind was only there to tell the truth.
Yeah, thank you. I think we are into our last few minutes. We haven't heard the voices of those online. I can give 2 chances to those who want to take the microphone. But while we think about who to come in, let me give the floor to Willem here in the room.
Thank you, Martin. Just once again, I think 2 questions quickly. Karin, especially when you wrote the book, you followed up, and the question that I want to ask, some of these accused, what happened? Did you follow up? They are on parole now, and maybe a story. And secondly, to Tolly, if you look at the symbol on the book, we see the European connection. We also know that there's currently an upsurge in radicalism, especially on the right-hand side, across the world, but also in Europe. Are there any lessons learned from this that could maybe assist them in some advice? Thank you.
Thank you for reserving the best, the end. Yes, Karin, why don't you start? I will also encourage you to use the opportunity to wrap up. It's also your opportunity to sell this book. So when you answer, Willem, make sure that you tell the audience why they must buy this book. And same with you, Tolly, as we go around. Yeah, and please go ahead.
Willem, so just where are they now? So in the epilogue, you can actually see when everybody got out on parole, and I chose not to include where they are now, because just as much as I respect the privacy of their children, I respect that they have paid their dues and they should be able to continue with life. Everybody might not agree with that, but that is how I left it. I mean, I've been speaking to Tolly every now and again to hear where they are. I still follow where these people are. I think it's one of those stories, and I joke with Tolly, the Boeremag, literally, it just grabs you and it won't ever leave you alone once you're involved with it. So I think for the rest of my life, I'll probably keep following these people and see where they are. And it's not because I care, but it's because it's become such a big part of my life. It's just something that I follow. And then for the sales pitch, I'm not a salesperson, I'm a journalist. You've just heard everything about the book, but there should be a few copies available outside.
Great. Tolly?
Then yes, one the cover of the book is just pick it up, Karin, again. That is the oral rune. That is from the Nordic alphabet, the same alphabet where the swastika comes from. That is used by mostly right-wing extremists all over the world, and as writing and reference and supporting the ideology. So it is very interesting. The Christchurch shooter in New Zealand. The moment I saw the picture of his firearm, there was a little rune painted on his firearm.
Just sorry, Tony, but might be interested in this. His manifesto, I think, was titled "The Last Rhodesian."
Yes,
Oh.
yeah, he was, and just Christchurch shooter visited South Africa for 30 days. He spent 30,000 Australian dollars in South Africa. That is so the link from him with South Africa and just the insignia was there. So yes, but across the world, once you see the Nordic alphabet as part of the groupings insignia, you can link them right wing and you can link them to each other all over the world.
Okay.
Yes, as far as the whereabouts of the accused, I don't know. Accused never contacted the prosecutor of the release, and I've not bumped into any of the accused. There's only Cobus Pretorius that I've seen twice. His release, others I do not know.
Okay. Someone online is asking for the floor. We are already over time, but because no one spoke, let me give the floor to Cleopatra. Are you able to speak, Cleopatra?
Finally, you recognize me, Martin. Thank you. Good morning. Oh, yeah, good day. Colonel Frechtenberg and advocate and the whole team. Thank you for this presentation. Thank you, ISS, for the presentation. I've learned a lot. So I heard the Colonel and the advocate talking about how they collaborated together between the prosecution team and the investigating officer, including the intelligence. So they even mentioned that you need to be to have a good relationship, and to have that you need to have also mutual respect amongst yourself. So what are my questions? There's something also they said about the Colonel even spoke about he read the Quran to understand if you want to understand ISIS, we have to read the Quran. I know then if you have to understand Boeremag, that means you need to know Afrikaans. So then what came into my mind is that also when they were talking, they mentioned that after the case of the Boeremag, I don't know, it was after or during the case, they had to establish or maybe I can say it's an organization where the law enforcement or the relevant stakeholders had to come together and discuss. But what happened in a situation where you find out that some of the stakeholders or some of the organizations who are involved here, they don't take the decisions that are made in that level, especially in that developed structure that is overlooking these investigations and these activities of Boeremag and terrorism. So how do you handle that if they don't, some of the organizations, they ignore the instructions or the decisions taken in that, or I can say panel or in that meeting? Number two, what I've noticed also is because that after the Boeremag, there was a change or amendment in law, especially the firearms law. I've seen with the post-apartheid, because after the Syria, the influx of South African who were going to Syria to join ISIS, lots of people who came back were not prosecuted because our law was vague or left out some of the activities. Now it's being amended to cover some of the activities so that must be able to to prosecute those who go to war zone areas and come back to the country if they are lucky. So, and another thing, what I've sent a message to us. We had a problem. I heard you talked about the powder or the powder that was found or that was used to manufacture explosives. We have a problem, a challenge where we found the powder in one of our cases, and the target was an ISIS, it's an ISIS member. But what is happening? Our explosives guys, they check the powder. They say no, it's just a powder, just a powder. It's not something that can manufacture a bomb. I don't know if we have someone or organization or where we can take this powder to be reanalyzed, because we don't believe that it's just nothing, because this person, we know what is capable of. You cannot have just a powder. So if we can get assistance in that, to refer us to someone. And my comment also, I see this is a very important session and very informative, and I feel that we need to have this as a law enforcement agency, because we are the ones who are supposed to know more about this information. So I'm not saying IS didn't do good. You did good, but the message didn't reach the relevant people, because I found this information on Google and I shared with my members. And unfortunately, because of our commitment, they can't attend personally. I see only one has joined virtually. But I think more law enforcement agencies or members need to get this information. It's very important for us. So if we can arrange another one, please, Martin. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karin. Yes, indeed, something we should definitely consider. We were actually talking about it, that when we first sent out the invitation, there was indeed a lot of interest in the seminar. We'll work on it, and certainly we'll organize a better one that will be able to reach more audience than we have today. But in terms of the issues that you raise, we'll just ask the panel, each person 30 seconds to react to it. And then Willem, if you could come in on the issue of the powder thing that she mentioned, whether there is any information. Oh, yes.
I will take it.
Okay, excellent. So then let's have a reaction from the panel on the critical issues that she has raised?
I think it's
Yes.
mostly for
Just the person speaking is Colonel Cleopatra Patsa. She was part of, when we did the Mangaung investigation, it's also a right-wing extremist group. She was part of my team. She could not speak Afrikaans. And Afrikaans is the language of our accused. And I told her, jokingly, go watch Seven Alarm and read, listen and read. And she's quite good in Afrikaans now. So thinking out of the box again, yes, it is so that this fighting terrorism is a continuous education, updating your education, updating everything. As you said, with the amendment of the Post-apartheid Act, Willem and Barton and I was here in the building when we advised the final advice to the Parliament Portfolio Committee just before the amendment, putting last amendments in there. You have to amend, you have to be open, the government have to be open to amend your legal structure to address the threat as the threat progresses. You cannot have a law of 1954 that is stagnant and don't change and not address the new threats. So we did, Tanisha did that. What is the last one that this is one of the things that I wrote down and I cannot see what I I think I'll stand by that. The structure that is so, if I'm worried if the partner said the structure is the counter-terrorism functional committee is stagnant at the moment. I would urge the government and the state parasitals to just continue with that, because that is the overwatch body that look at South Africa's safety.
Great. Yes, Brigadier.
Yeah. No, I don't have any question. No, you can explain maybe on the powder.
Yeah. Can you explain on the powders?
I'll take it off the floor with that lady. I don't know which cases. It's Roger. Yeah. What remembers? He will call her and he will clear it.
Okay.
We'll just find out which case it is.
Okay, great. Okay, so then we'll follow that up outside the room. So I believe we've come to the end. I want to ask you to give a heavy round of applause for the panel. Clap until you have blisters on your palms. Thank you very much. I think it was excellent discussion. Time is something that it's always affects good things. And I don't know whether you guys have noticed that when you have good things, that's when time comes to catch you. And indeed, we didn't have much time to discuss every single issue, but I believe we've been able to touch upon critical issues. Karin, thank you very much for putting this on the table for debate. You can see the great interest that the book really is provoking a lot of thought, a lot of debate, which we need to take forward. I think there are serious recommendations inside in terms of what do we do with Boeremag and other right-wing groups. I think, Tolly, you said it well, that terrorism, it's a continuous fight. It's not a once-off fight. It's something that we have to continuously do throughout our lives. So there is no point where we can say we stop fighting terrorism, because if we are not fighting, we are watching, right? We are doing surveillance to make sure that it doesn't escalate. And I think the debate so far that we've had has emphasized the need for prevention. The fact that Boeremag was an agitated group that was claiming its own right, claiming to take over. And I think the discussion here has said, we don't need to do that, right? South Africa is a democratic country, has frameworks in place where whatever you need, you can use the democratic process. If it is about power, follow the same process. There are elections. There are so many other avenues that you can do other than violence and other illegitimate actions. So this brings us really to an end. I want to thank all of you for making time to join us in this wonderful and important event. We always here at the Institute for Security Studies really appreciate every single second or minute that you offer to us to listen to our research, our activities, and whatever we do. And indeed, we are thanking you in the room and those online for joining us. It's a period, very busy period of many activities, but you chose to be here today. Thank you very much. I also want to thank our partners who continue to fund us to make the ISS capable, or to enable us be able to do this kind of work and to bring all of you for this interaction where we clarify our ideas. Thank you once again, the panelists. I want to thank my colleagues, those who work behind the scene to put this together. Thank you, Willem. We don't have the other staff here, but indeed they played a critical role to make this seminar possible. Thank the IT person, Richard, TJ, all those who played a role. Thank you very much. I think let's, I don't know if there are people who have bought the books and need to be autographed. The author is here. If you have your copy, we can spare 10 to 20 minutes for that session. Then we go out for lunch. But if not, we can go straight to lunch and continue with the discussion. Thank you very much, and I'll see you in our next event.
Thank you.